Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, CEO of Daily Clout, and I'm here because there's been a lot of requests for me to expand on kind of an important discovery that we made. Basically, for about a week, I've been asking stakeholders and supporters of the Green New Deal, which, of course, is an agenda promoted most famously by Representative Ocasio-Cortez. Uh, and, a lot of people have been getting online or on board and being very, very, very supportive. And I want a Green New Deal more as much as anyone. I want it yesterday. But I also feel strongly, and Daily Clout's mission is in line with this, that citizens of a democracy should not be asked to get on board with legislation that they can't see, influence, and have a share in the outcome for, or have a say about. And that's why BillCam exists, so that you can actually see and share legislation, tweet the bill to your rep, so there can be no more smoke-filled rooms. One thing that we have learned categorically in 2 years of reading the bills, which is what we do at Daily Clout every week, is that legislation, whether it's from the right or the left, very typically seems to be a farm bill, but actually buries a gigantic allocation to something totally unrelated to farming, like the telecommunications industry, like the farm bill that we read and explained before Christmas and the New Year. So since we've seen this happen over and over, and since it's everyone's job and right to have bills explained to them, I pushed hard to see what the Green New Deal is. And that led to a journey. The Sunshine Movement, one of the biggest supporters, directed me to content that was an overview or goals, but it wasn't draft legislation. You understand the difference. Draft legislation is legislators actually preparing a bill for review by citizens and for action in Congress. So I pushed and pushed various stakeholders. It was a little bizarre on Twitter, who were supporting the Green New Deal. And it was like, oh, where is the Green New Deal? Where is the foundational document? And I kept being sent things that were not draft legislation. So wonderfully enough, because this is the way democracies are supposed to work, and this is not an expose, but a nudge to really get this important legislation right, Ocasio-Cortez posted saying that it was in response to people asking, what is the Green New Deal? What she had that she called the Green New Deal. So I will tell you, it is not draft legislation. This is the headline. It's not draft legislation. It's 11 pages of a Google Doc, like 11 pages. And not that a short bill or a short agenda or manifesto is a bad one, but it's very, very much worth reading, these 11 pages. And that's what we're going to do in this video today. So I've posted it on Twitter, and I've sent it out again on Twitter, so you can follow along, and we'll post it on Daily Clout. And it's called Draft Text for Proposed Addendum to House Rules for 116th Congress of the United States. So what I'm going to tell you is that that's not even draft legislation for legislation. It's draft legislation for an addendum to rules. In other words, it changes the rules of how Congress operates, okay? It's not the same as a bill. It's not even the same as a draft bill. So it's creating a new process for the allocation of power, essentially. Now, the headline of what I'm going to walk you through is that while this push of Ocasio-Cortez's for a Green New Deal seems very oppositional, I really want to ask you to be very skeptical and critical in scrutinizing, the optics of this Green New Deal. And here's what I mean. Ocasio-Cortez has protested, and I respect that. There was a protest for the Green New Deal in Nancy Pelosi's office. I respect that. But as a former consultant to the vice president and to the campaign of the president, formally and informally, I know that that's really, really hard to pull off without security basically okaying it. You really can't just walk into a congressperson's office and protest. Security doesn't permit it. So that's of interest. And the drumbeat of a very, what seems like a very well-coordinated campaign to get people on board the Green New Deal, which I really want to stress, we need a Green New Deal yesterday. But the drumbeat really has all the hallmarks of a campaign that is coordinated with a great deal of sophistication and yet made to look like a grassroots campaign. And the reason I bring that up is that, sadly enough, the DNC, like the RNC, is perfectly capable, and we've seen this again and again on the left, of positioning a candidate like Bill de Blasio as this outsider. Much was made of his multiracial family. He's going to be the representative of the grassroots. Then he gets into office, he becomes inaccessible to reporters, and he's totally in the pocket of developers. So just because someone seems really cool and, young and non-traditional and is fantastic on Twitter, she may be as awesome as many people think. I certainly respect a lot of things about Ocasio-Cortez. However, it doesn't mean that the old guard DNC isn't perfectly capable of essentially constructing what looks like a true two-pronged action, where there's the challenger and there's the resistant establishment representative, and it seems like a conflict, but in the end you get the same old power elite owning everything. So that's the background of what I want to share with you about these 11 pages of the Green New Deal. Because the bottom line is, if you read the Green New Deal, some things are amazing and some things are a giant gift to private sector hyper elite stakeholders without any kind of oversight from the people of the nation. All right, so that's the background. So look then at the first page. Again, we here at Daily Clout, we teach people like what is involved with running your democracy. This is not legislation. The headline is Draft Text for Proposed Addendum to House Rules for 116th Congress. And it's about committees, commissions, and House offices. A is the establishment of a select committee for a Green New Deal. 1, establishment composition. It's hereby established, and this is the proposed change to the rules, that a select committee for a Green New Deal will be formed. So really understand, this is not delivering a bill to you or a new law. It is delivering a new form of power. These people who are sitting on this newly proposed select committee are the ones to decide what happens with the Green New Deal, okay? The composition, it'll be composed of 15 members appointed by the Speaker, of whom 6 may be appointed on the recommendation of the minority leader. It'll designate 1 member as a chair, and a vacancy in the select committee will be filled in the same manner as the original appointment. In other words, this leaves the people out altogether. And of course, committees, do this, but just bear in mind, you don't get to vote on who these people are who are going to be designated, these 15 members of Congress who are going to be designated to run this gigantic military level, Ocasio-Cortez keeps saying, and her supporters keep saying, wartime footing level investment of American money and resources into the Green New Deal. All right, it's 15 people you didn't decide on. It gives even more power over the Green New Deal to the party gateholders. Yes, from both parties, but it's not a grassroots process to allocate all of this power to the select committee. The legislative function, The Select Committee will have authority to develop a detailed national industrial economic mobilization plan, hereafter referred to as the Plan for a Green New Deal, for the transition of the U.S. economy to become greenhouse gas emissions neutral and to significantly draw down greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and oceans. Okay, that's great, but note, it is the whole economy, right? It's not the government, it's not incentives, it's taking over, it's changing the methods of the whole economy. I may want that. It may take such drastic measures, but just know what you're voting for. And also it says to draw down greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and oceans. This is really important. There are new technologies that are experimental, and they're part of the arsenal of geoengineering. The tech and IP for these, including carbon sequestration from the atmosphere and the oceans, totally experimental, is owned by venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. It's owned by the Bill Gateses of the world. I've been reporting on this with Harvard and geoengineering in the atmosphere called ScopeX. So this isn't just let's become free of fossil fuels. That's fantastic. But it's also a gigantic allocation of the nation's resources to these new experimental technologies, greenhouse gas drawdown from the atmosphere and oceans that is owned by companies like Intellectual Ventures, a gigantic, not transparent IP company in Silicon Valley. All right. I'm very familiar with this because of the reporting I've done on the influence of Silicon Valley and their owning of the tech and IP for geoengineering, and their pushing of a very similar bill, which passed by Zoe Lofgren's sponsorship, that created a kind of privatized weather industry. All right. Not only that, but also the Green New Deal will promote economic and environmental justice and equality. So it's not just about saving the planet. It folds in very intensive proposals and programs in the name of economic equality. I like economic equality. I think our country needs more of it, but it is not just a Green New Deal. It is stating in the preamble that it's about carbon emissions and it's about income disparities. All right, I may like that, but you really deserve to know that this is what's in this bill. And also you deserve to know that it's not like ordinary bills where they might address income disparities and you lobby your representative to pass that bill in various ways that are transparent. It hands over the resources, the allocation, the execution of ending those income disparities to this committee of these 15 people who are not elected by you for this committee. All right. The plan shall be prepared in consultation with experts and leaders from business, labor, state and local governments, tribal nations, academia, and broadly representative civil society groups and communities. Okay, that's nice, but I don't know if it includes you or me. B, it's driven by the federal government in collaboration, co-creation, and partnership with business, labor, state and local governments, tribal nations, research institutions, civil society groups, and committees. So it's not the government doing this, right? It's not your representatives creating a law. It hands over partnership to winners and losers in the private sector, in business, Indian reservations, which may be great, but they are not governed by the law of the United States. Winners and losers in the nonprofit world. It creates insiders who get to be lucky enough to co-create with these 15 members of Congress, right? It's got to be executed no more than 10 years from the start of execution. It provides opportunities for high-income work, entrepreneurship, and cooperative and public ownership. Well, I like entrepreneurship and high incomes, but cooperative ownership means these private sector entities are going to get to partner with a gigantic chunk of the federal government, all right? And and additionally be responsive to in accordance with the goals and guidelines related to social, economic, racial, regional, and gender-based justice and equality set forth in paragraph 6. So again, what worries me about this as an American is that we have that language. It's called the Constitution of the United States. It guarantees equality for all. So paragraph 6 basically rewrites the Constitution. I'm mostly a progressive, even though these days I think I'm an independent, but it is worrying to me that 15 people are going to decide better than the founders did, better than this 200-year-old document called the Constitution of the United States of America, what equality is and what justice is. And they're going to do so not using our beautiful language of the Bill of Rights. They're going to do so using their own metrics, like, and I'm a feminist and I'm anti-racist, but it worries me that these 15 people are deciding what is racial justice, what is gender justice, what is regional justice, what is economic justice, what is social justice. That's not what we elected them for, and that's not the way our government is supposed to work. All right, moving on. In addition to preparing the plan as set forth in paragraph 2A1, the Select Committee shall help prepare draft legislation. Okay, and they said it'll be completed in accordance with the timing. So I can't say this enough, everyone, there is no Green New Deal draft legislation. It doesn't exist. What there is this proposed change in rules that would allow draft legislation to be produced by 15 people that you didn't elect in the year 2020. All right, that's what this does. The draft legislation doesn't exist. I can't stress that enough. This sets the stage for it to be created not by people you elected to do it, all right? Not by you, by these 15 people, half from each side, and the chair designated by the Speaker of the House. All right. The Select Committee shall not have legislative jurisdiction and shall have no authority to take legislative action on any bill or resolution, provided that the foregoing shall not affect the Select Committee's ability to prepare draft legislation. All right, well, that's very dangerous legalese, because it basically says, sure, we're going to, create legislation the way the separation of powers says we can, but not if it contradicts the paragraph 2A1, which creates all of these mysterious social, economic, racial, regional, and gender-based justice and equality norms that are very vaguely set out but not identified. So basically, that's a giant loophole that allows them to not pass legislation in the normal way in this country. B, investigative jurisdiction. The Select Committee shall have the authority to investigate, study, make findings, convene experts and leaders from industry, academia, local communities, labor, finance, technology, and any other industry or group that the Select Committee deems to be a relevant resource. And this Select Committee may, at its discretion and as its members deem appropriate, hold public hearings in connection with any aspect of its investigative functions. Did you hear that? It means that they can again choose winners or losers from industry, from their big donors, from tribes that have a bunch of money, from whoever they want, and consult with them and get their input about what this should look like, meaning let them lobby. But they don't have to let you know. They don't have to have public hearings. All right, now actual legislation, there does have to be a public comment process. There's a period where it goes into the database, which comes out as the API stream that we use at BillCam, right? The GovTrack, and you get to see it. That's your right as a member of this democracy. But this paragraph says no. It's at their discretion that these 15 people tell you what is actually who they're consulting with. And these hearings are at their discretion. They can do them or not do them. That is not a democracy. All right. Procedure. Except as specified in paragraph 2, the Select Committee shall have the authorities and responsibilities of and shall be subject to the same limitations as a standing committee of the House, and shall be deemed a committee of the House for all purposes of law and rule. Well, that's good. B1 rules To be confirmed by reference to overall House Rules package, organization of committees, and to be confirmed by reference to overall House Rules package, procedures of committees and unfinished business shall apply to the select committee where not inconsistent with this resolution. So again, that does seem to provide a loophole for this committee not to be treated under the rule of law the way other committees are if the outcome deviates from the resolution. Service on the select committee shall not count against the limitations on committee or subcommittee service in rule, and then it's not filled in, it's a bracket, to be confirmed by reference to overall House Rules package, end bracket. It's not filled in, it's a blank check. In other words, it's saying section 3A2 under procedure says you are not, if you're a member of this committee, obligated to the limitations on your term that apply to other House committees. Okay, did you hear that? That's what happens in a totalitarian state. And it's not filled in. Take a look at that. To be confirmed by reference to overall House Rules package. It's not locked in what the limitations on people's service in the select committee of this powerful 15 people is going to be. I'm going to skip funding. It can, except to point out that for 4C, without limiting the foregoing, the select committee may at any time and from time to time during the course of its mandate apply to the House for an additional dedicated budget to carry out its mandate. So depending on what relationships are worked out by the select committee, they don't have to go to you, the people, to continue funding the select committee and its mandate. They get to just apply to the House. So it's like, again, a blank check. Interim reporting, they report to the House. 5A, the select committee may report to the House or any House committee it deems appropriate from time to time the results of its investigations, together with details, findings, and interim recommendations, as it may deem advisable. So again, doesn't have to. It doesn't have to report to other committees unless it wants to, when it wants to. Select committee shall complete the finalized draft legislation by a date no later than the date that is 90 calendar days after the select committee has completed the plan, no later than March 1st, 2020. So that's the deadline for when the draft legislation actually has to be ready, is a little over a year from now. 3, the select committee shall ensure and procure that the plan and the draft legislation prepared in accordance with this section, upon completion, be made available, listen, to the general public in widely accessible formats, including without limitation via at least one dedicated website and a print publication by a date no later than 30 calendar days following the respective dates for completion set forth earlier. Again, that worries me because it doesn't appear to be legislation that's going to be submitted through GovTrack for the usual scrutiny. It appears to be saying, sure, we'll let the people know what this gigantic sector of the economy is on a website that we create or in a publication that we release. And that is absolutely subject to spin and manipulation. The way that, frankly, this document, I think, has been subject to spin and manipulation because no one's read it that I can tell. All right. Scope of the plan for Green New Deal. Now we're getting to it around page 4. This is actually unpaginated on Ocasio-Cortez's site, her link. So it's hard to hold people accountable in reading it, but this would be around page 4 if it were paginated. Can you believe it? Like an unpaginated Google Doc is what this gigantic mobilization is based on. A, the plan for a Green New Deal and the draft legislation shall be developed with the objective of reaching the following outcomes within the target window of 10 years from the start of execution of the plan. 1, dramatically expand existing renewable power sources and deploy new production capacity with the goal of meeting 100% of national power demand through renewable sources. Fabulous. Love it. Who would object? That is very, very exciting. And that's terrific. No one would object to that. 2, this is very problematic. Building a national energy efficient, quote, smart grid. Now, those of you who've been following 5G and the smart grid research know that this is really a gigantic gift to the telecom industry, and it also allows unlimited surveillance of citizens. With a smart grid, anyone can find out where you are and what you're doing if they have access to the smart grid at any time. And there are huge health concerns about 5G and smart cities and a smart grid. And by the way, the person who has invested $80 million in smart cities is Bill Gates. And he's built, an $80 million smart city grid project in Arizona, the same place that ScopeX has released what may be alumina particulates in the atmosphere, which helps conductivity of satellites and telecom. So this is very concerning. We're having all kinds of reports from Environmental Health Trust, credible peer-reviewed studies about the damage to cellular structure in people's DNA from 5G and smart grids. And this would basically say, and it's right up there in the second paragraph, build a national energy efficient smart grid. So you can't get away from it. If you're in the United States of America, you cannot get away from the smart grid that Ocasio-Cortez is proposing as the second thing of all the things we need to save the environment. We don't need that. It does not go to energy efficiency. It is not important except for the telecom industry and surveillance. 3, upgrading every residential and industrial building for state-of-the-art energy efficiency, comfort, and safety. I like that too. But remember, when she says every, she's not saying every government building, every school, every post office. She's saying every building. And so that means, like, just like I don't like Con Ed coming into my house with smart meter technology because it's my private space, this gives the federal government and their random unnamed partners that these 15 people will have partnered with and chosen the power to make sure that you and your house complies with this quote unquote upgrade of state-of-the-art energy efficiency, comfort, and safety. And again, whose comfort, whose safety, who's defining how I define comfort and safety in the privacy of my own home? The Democratic National Committee, no thank you. The Republican National Committee, no thank you. It's a huge open door to violate people's privacy in their homes. 4, eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from the manufacturing, agricultural, and other industries, including by investing in local scale agriculture in communities across the country. Love that. Awesome. I'm all for it. Hooray. That's what it should be doing. 5, eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from repairing and improving transportation, other infrastructure, and upgrading water infrastructure to ensure universal access to clean water. So I think that's wonderful. But again, whose ownership of this infrastructure? The Green New Deal allowed private industry like Nestle, who's buying up municipal water reserves, to partner with these powerful 15 people that this draft change to the rules establishes, right? It doesn't say we're going to make sure that government ownership of water sources and local ownership of water sources, municipal ownership of water sources, is clean and not emitting greenhouse gases. It's saying everything, all of it, and all of it could be co-owned by Nestle, according to the Green New Deal. And then the last thing I want you to do is go to what would be page 6 of the Green New Deal and take a look, because this is where it gets very, very compelling indeed. And I'm just going to call that up again. What you really need to know is that on page 5 and 6, it says this is not going to be funded by the federal government, where it's not your taxpayer money that's funding the Green New Deal. It actually says, and let me call it up, that the people who are going to be in charge of the economics of the Green New Deal are not you and not your representatives. It's the private sector. Let's move down to the Green New Deal. Oh, yes. Now we're going to also say number 6, funding massive investment in the drawdown of greenhouse gases. Again, massive investment in this experimental technology, which Bill Gates owns and which venture capitalists in Silicon Valley own the IP for, right? Carbon sequestration. It is experimental. I love it, but it's not. She's not saying massive investment in electric car grids, right? That would be impactful, or massive investment in making Amtrak and national rail lines not carbon emission producing. She's not saying massive solar rollout, right? That would be incredibly impactful. She's not saying let's put solar on top of schools and hospitals and government buildings and the Pentagon. She's not saying that. All of that would make sense under a Green New Deal. She's saying we are going to shift a gigantic amount of this nation's economy with no oversight, especially no public hearings, to that handful of venture capitalists in Silicon Valley who own the IP for the drawdown of greenhouse gases, right? It's not about not creating more. It's about specifically this geoengineering process, this carbon sequestration from the atmosphere, experimental, owned by Bill Gates and his friends. And finally, 7, making green technology, industry, expertise, products, and services a major export of the United States, love that, with the aim of becoming the undisputed international leader in helping other countries transition to completely greenhouse gas neutral economies and to bringing about a global Green New Deal. So just like I don't like imperialism through the US military, I would like us to encourage a global Green New Deal, but since a Green New Deal here includes smart cities enforced on us, privatization of the water supply enforced on us through partnerships that are not accountable, massive handover of national budgets to geoengineering, IP owners in the tech world, I don't know that we want to enforce this Green New Deal on the rest of the world. I think that it's up to the rest of the world. And if they see that we're doing a great job with our own Green New Deal, which should include things that are not here, like a massive investment in solar, not here, like a massive investment in making the federal government infrastructure non-carbon emitting specifically, they're right to question our motivations if we, get our tech guys and private sector hugely funded with no oversight, and then say, okay, if you want to play with us, you have to do that too. All right, B, the plan for a Green New Deal shall recognize that the national industrial economic mobilization of this scope and scale is an historic opportunity to virtually eliminate poverty in the United States, and to make prosperity, wealth, and economic security available to everyone participating in the transformation. And this is where it really gets into not the environment. And I totally get that many critics of injustice point out that you need to tackle the environmental crisis holistically and address economic inequality. But this is a whole other thing than an environmental New Deal, this section here, which is section B1. The draft legislation shall, 1, provide all members of our society across all regions and communities the opportunity, training, and education to be a full and equal participant in the transition, including through a job guarantee program to assure a living wage job to every person who wants one. I love that, but it's a huge thing, right? It's a huge thing. And if Ocasio-Cortez can't get the people of the United States to support a job guarantee program for a living wage job for every person who wants one by straight legislation about that, sneaking it in through the back door is not democracy in my view. I like it, but my conservative friends in South Carolina really might not like it, and they really might not like having it mandated by 15 people they didn't choose and they can't oversee. 2, diversify local and regional economies with a particular focus on communities where the fossil fuel industry holds significant control over the labor market to ensure workers have the necessary tools, opportunities, and economic assistance to succeed during the energy transition. That's fine. It's a lot like Clinton retraining after NAFTA. 3, require strong enforcement of labor, workplace safety, and wage standards that recognize the rights of workers to organize and unionize free of coercion, intimidation, harassment, and creation of meaningful quality career employment. Again, I like it, but I'm kind of a commie. It's a gigantic assurance to unions and to the Democratic base, by the way, working people, communities of color, they're entitled, but it's not a Green New Deal. It's highly partisan. It's a policy, again, that a lot of people on the left will support and on the right will not support, whereas a real Green New Deal should be a Green New Deal about the environment. Ensure a just transition for all workers, low-income communities, communities of color, indigenous communities, rural and urban communities, and the frontline communities most affected by climate change, pollution, and other environmental harm, including by ensuring that local implementation of the transition is led from the community level and by prioritizing solutions that end the harms faced by frontline communities from climate change and environmental pollution. Again, I like grassroots organizing. I like community-led solutions. I love local solutions, but this is a federal bill and it's a federal action. And so this is a gigantic power grab to intervene in how local communities do business. And maybe the climate crisis has led to a situation in which we just need to suspend local municipalities' right to make their own municipal laws. I don't think so. I think that the legislation we've seen at a local and state level during the Trump era shows that communities can actually lead the charge to address climate change. But this, please understand, this gives those 15 people the power to say, no, 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 Sebastopol, no, 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 Charlotte, North Carolina, we know better. And we're going to tell you how to run your town, how to run your community. We're going to pick the winners or losers in your community. And I was reading, characterizations on the right of the Green New Deal as taking away local autonomy. I thought it was like crazy, hysteria. It's right here. It really does take away local autonomy. I wish I was wrong, but it actually does. In paragraph 4 of B, the plan for a Green New Deal, around page 7, if this were paginated. 5, protect and enforce sovereign rights and land rights of tribal nations. So that's a gift to Native communities who have a lot of money these days from mineral rights. A lot of tribes do, and have powerful lobbyists in Washington. And I'm not going to, object to that, but I just think people should know about it. 6, mitigate deeply entrenched racial, regional, and gender-based inequalities in income and wealth, including without limitation, ensuring that federal and other investment will be equitably distributed to historically impoverished, low-income, deindustrialized, and other marginalized communities in such a way that builds wealth and ownership at the community level. Without limitation. This is section B, subparagraph 6. Without limitation, ensuring that federal and other investment will be equitably distributed to historically impoverished, low-income, deindustrialized, or other marginalized communities in such a way that builds wealth and ownership at the community level. Again, I like policies that strengthen the middle class and the working people. That's my politics. But this without limitation lets these 15 people and their democratic, with their democratic powers, and I historically vote Democrat, so, I'm truly objective about this. It lets them say, we will reallocate the wealth and resources from this Green New Deal without limitation to our base. That's what this says. Or we can, without oversight, without stricture, we get to do it. We 15 people and our friends and colleagues, which basically is buying a democratic victory for the rest of time immemorial, under the guise of the environment. And again, this is, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's right here. I'm reading the actual text that Ocasio-Cortez sent after prodding from me and Daily Cloud and not that many other people that I could see. But other people after they noticed our tweets that there was no Green New Deal. Where was it? This really isn't unusual. It's not just the Democrats are doing what the Republicans have always done, but it's not grassroots activism about the environment right here. It's basically using a real thing, which is the real environmental crisis and the huge opportunity, the blank check that people are really willing to give someone who purports to have a solution, sprinkling in fantastic and very needed policies, but also sprinkling in, hoping you won't notice, gigantic gifts to their own constituents. Gotcha? Gigantic pork to their own base. And we just know that marginalized communities tend to vote Democratic instead of Republican. They get all the wealth in this. I like income equality, but this is an unchecked blank check for communities that who defines? Am I marginalized? I'm an upper middle class white woman in the West Village, but I have a gender. Do I get some of the money? I mean, it literally leaves undefined and up to the discretion of these 15 people who their friends are, who get the unlimited transfer of wealth from this gigantic program. C, and this is very important, and this is the last page. It's about page 6, if this was paginated. It's a brief document. C, who funds it? How does the funding work? Listen carefully. The plan for the Green New Deal and the draft legislation shall recognize that the innovative public and other financing structures, are a crucial component, bad grammar, whatever, in achieving and furthering the goals and guidelines relating to social, economic, racial, regional, and gender-based justice and equality, and cooperative and public ownership set forth in paragraphs 2A1 and 6B. Again, not about the environment, about unspecified norms of racial, economic, social, regional, and gender-based justice and equality, which presumably our Constitution has already spelled out very effectively for the last 200 years, right? And it also stresses that the financing structures are going to be cooperative as well as public ownership. So that means private industry in partnership with public ownership. That means that they can engage in eminent domain. They can take private ownership, as I read this, if this Green New Deal calls for it. But they can also pick, as I keep saying, their friends, their buddies on Wall Street, their buddies on Silicon Valley, their buddies at home, their high net worth donors to be the cooperators in this gigantic New Deal. And again, let me remind you, the actual New Deal in the Depression, which is the model for this, it didn't create public-private partnerships in any substantive way. It was the federal government. It was accountable. It was your tax dollars. That is not what this creates. This absolutely okays public-private partnership. I'm sorry to be shifting around. I have as some of you know, I have spina bifida, unfortunately, so it's hard for me to sit still for 45 minutes, but I'm almost done. The plan and the draft legislation shall accordingly ensure that the majority of financing of the plan shall be accomplished by the federal government using a combination of the Federal Reserve, a new public bank or system of regional and specialized public banks, public venture funds, and other such vehicles or structures that the Select Committee deems appropriate, in order to ensure that interest and other investment returns generated from public investments made in connection with the plan will be returned to the Treasury, reduce taxpayer burden, and allow for more investment. Well, that's the last sentence in the Green New Deal. It is not a grammatically correct sentence, so it's hard to actually understand what it's saying, but what it appears clearly to be saying is that this vast transfer of wealth, this war footing level transfer of wealth, will go through the federal government, but using a combination of the Federal Reserve, which is not part of the federal government, right? It's a private entity, which was created, I believe, in the teens of the last century. It is totally opaque. It isn't audited. No one sees what it is, right? It's private, right? It's going to flow through the Federal Reserve, comma, also a new public bank or system of regional and specialized public banks, comma. Existing banks aren't good enough. Our federal government isn't good enough for managing this gigantic transfer of wealth in the hands of 15 people. They're going to create a new system of banks just to handle the money siphoned from our treasury for this Green New Deal, which is unaccountable. A new public bank or system of regional and specialized public banks. It's like, literally, it's like creating the Department of Homeland Security. It's creating although even more complex and unaccountable, a gigantic network of unaccountable new banks, new financial instruments, right? Like the toxic financing crisis, new ways to say this is a thing that money can flow through, new banks, right? Which means presumably new regulations for these new banks, or system of regional and specialized public banks. What is a public bank, right? What is that? Do we even have such a thing? Which will again benefit whoever these 15 people say they'll benefit, with terms and conditions you and I won't be reading easily, for sure. And the money is going to flow through those created financial instruments, right? And not only that, other such vehicles or structures that the select committee deems appropriate. So they could flow the money through the Bahamas legally, according to this. They could flow the money through their nephew's bank account if that's a structure that they deem appropriate, according to this. It's not saying through, in a way that's overseen by the Office of Management and Budget. It's not saying through allocation by Congress. It's sending the money out of Congress, out of congressional appropriations, into this mysterious, uncreated, newly to be created set of the Federal Reserve, private entity, unnamed, newly created banks, right? Not even existing banks, which have to comply with the law as it stands and be audited and be accountable, and other structures, other financial vehicles, if these 15 people think it's appropriate. They could take the $1 trillion they're aiming to have allocated, at least if it's a wartime footing of financing, and flow it through any damn financial vehicle they want with any rules, according to paragraph C of the last section on what would be about page 6, the final section. So that should blow your mind and raise every kind of alarm, And then they say, in order to ensure that interest and other investment returns generated from public investments made in connection with the plan will be returned to the Treasury. What is that even? Like, how? You're going to invent new banks with rules that we haven't even seen? And that's the way that you're going to make sure that the return on the investment goes back to the Treasury? Like, that's not even a thing in capitalism. There's no rule that says that these alleged new banks have to send the returns back to the federal government. The Federal Reserve certainly doesn't have to send the investment returns back to the federal government. Your buddy on the golf course, according to this, gets to open a bank or a financial instrument and keep the investment returns and say to you, oh yes, I sent it back to the federal government, so it goes back to the Treasury. But even if it is thoroughly compliant, with the kind of weirdly socialistic language of this paragraph, let's play it out the way presumably socialist Ocasio-Cortez seems to think it might work. Even if you got like an actual public bank to absorb this vast money, and you actually had some way to make sure that they put the interest of this gigantic investment back into the federal government Treasury, it is still a gigantic nationalization / privatization in hands that are not the free market of a gigantic sector of our economy. And you really need to think about that wherever you are on the political spectrum. It could be a gigantic gift to your buddies on the golf course if you're one of those 15, or it could be a gigantic gift to socialism, basically. But either way, it is not accountable, and it's not the way our system is supposed to work, in which Congress oversees appropriations, and you elect or fire your member of Congress. And there's zero transparency about where the money flows. And allow for more investment. All right. So the last paragraph makes sure that you do not get to find out where the money is flowing, if any of it is being skimmed off, whether the percentage, whatever it is, goes back to the Treasury. You're not auditing the Federal Reserve. Your congressman is not auditing the Federal Reserve. So this takes that $1 trillion or whatever wartime footing they're aiming at, that price tag, which is undisclosed, and flows it through totally unaccountable financial instruments, some of which are private and some of which they will invent by March of 2020. This is Naomi Wolf. I really hope you read this whole document all the way through. It will blow your mind, whether you're on the left, the right, in the middle, an independent, anarchist, socialist, anything, anywhere on the spectrum. This should blow your mind if you think that you live in a democracy in which we have 3 branches of government and there are proper limitations to what Congress can do. This is me. It's been 50 minutes. I will post. I'll take your questions. Please share widely. If you think it's important to have people who are trained to read actual bills and explain them in language anyone can understand, that's our mission at Daily Clout. We have talented explainers, highly trained Nisha Jain at the University of Virginia Law School, highly trained Isaiah Thompson at NYU's Wagner School of Public Policy, me with my 25 years as a journalist and a one-time political consultant. We have incredible explainers, and if you think that this mission is important, please, it takes resources to keep our servers going, to keep our workers paid. So please subscribe, become a founding member of Daily Clout. Do all you can to share our work, and please send around this important analysis of a big bill.